Gary Taubes asks in the Wall Street Journal, what if meat is the healthiest diet? Oh yeah, he went there, and you're going to find out the details here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content. You got to go follow me over on Instagram. I am at Jimmy Rants, and that's where all the fun begins at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. Appreciate you guys being here today. We also simulcast over here on my Facebook page, as well as over on Twitch. If you're new to Twitch, Twitch is an app you can download to your phone, and then follow Jimmy Moore Rants, and you'll never miss a show over there. In case something happens to one of these traditional outlets for information, I will always be on Twitch. If you missed the live, you can watch it on the replay right here on the Jimmy Rants Instagram page. We throw it right up on IGTV just as soon as this episode is over. It's also up over on Twitch on replay as well as on YouTube. And then finally, all of the past episodes are at JimmyRants.com. Okay, you guys, good Monday morning. You guys know what I do here on Jimmy Rants is bring you cutting edge information about all kinds of things. I do try to stay on top of the nutritional health news. Over the weekend, somebody said, you need to stick to low carb and nothing else. And I'm like, yeah, lady, you don't know me very well. I have talked about low-carb diets for 17 years. There is nobody in this community that has been more dedicated to sharing about low-carb information than Jimmy freaking Moore. I promise you. So if I happen to talk about other things that are interesting to me, like wearing masks and the efficacy thereof, or something about this jab in the arm, or anything else I talk about, get over yourself, because I'm going to talk about what Jimmy Moore is passionate about, and it's a lot more than a monolithic view of what you think I am. So that was kind of interesting to me. But you'll be pleased to know most of my articles this week are about nutritional health, and I'll give you a quick rundown. So today I have a brand new article that came out literally while I was doing Jimmy Rants on Friday. This article from Gary Taubes came out, and I'll get into this here in a minute about what if meat is our healthiest diet. So that's what we're going to hit on here today. On Tuesday, I have a study that came out looking at keto for women who have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and liver dysfunction. It's a randomized controlled trial, so I'll give you all the details of that on Tuesday. On Wednesday, I have one of those articles, you guys. It's one of those articles where some smart expert thinks they know what they're saying, and it's about essential carbohydrates and the deficiency. What happens when you don't eat enough carbs? Jimmy gonna have fun with that one. And then on Thursday, I have yet another research paper that's a case report about a carnivore diet being helpful for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That's SIBO for those of you that are familiar with that. So that's coming up on Thursday, and then Friday is Ask Me Anything. But today, you guys, if you're just joining us, I'm going to read from an article written by the great Gary Taubes. So those of you that might have come into the low-carb keto space just in recent years, you may not know the seminal role that Gary Taubes has played in the movement of low-carb diets. Even before I came on the scene, which was 17 years ago, Gary was the one that really brought Atkins to light and the low-carb diet and the efficacy for weight loss and all these health benefits. So he wrote a New York Times Magazine article called What If It's Been a Big Fat Lie? And that came out, you guys, in 2001. Go back, go look it up on your favorite search browser. Type in Gary Taubes, New York Times Magazine, and what if it's all been a big fat lie? And he wrote that article, and oh my gosh, like that was his first foray into this world of nutritional health, and his life was never the same after that. That magazine article got so much attention, got so many people talking about it. There was a resurgence in the Atkins diet popularity. It just became this juggernaut. And that momentum continued until Dr. Atkins died after the slip and fall accident in 2003. I went on the Atkins diet in 2004 and lost the weight in 2004, and then started blogging in 2005, podcasting in 2006. But Gary, all the while, was out there doing his thing. And in 2007, he came out with his seminal scientific book, Good Calories, Bad Calories. That mamma jamma is 600 pages long, 150 pages of which are just citations supporting what he wrote in there. He's a very scholared researcher and investigative journalist. Like, he really digs deep into things and how they work. He's been involved in all kinds of the controversial things of other industries. Well, when he dipped his toe in nutritional health, I don't think he quite realized what he was getting himself into. Anyway, since Good Calories, Bad Calories, he's written Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It, The Case for Sugar, and his brand new book is called The Case for Keto. Here it is. I'm going to be interviewing Gary coming up on my podcast very soon, Livin, Vida, Low-Carb show. But in there, he makes the case for keto. So the Wall Street Journal let him write an article basically talking about his book and some of the things that he discovered in his research for the case for keto. So I want to read that article for you here today. And again, if you joined us late, Gary Taubes, yes, that guy, who I just gave the history of and why he's so important in the low-carb movement, he wrote a Wall Street Journal article where he asks the question, what if meat is our healthiest diet? Yes, he went there with the rise in low-carb diets many years ago, but then paleo came around about a decade ago. Keto was popular about 5 years ago, started coming on really strong. And now carnivore. This is such a prescient article now more than ever before. So let's get into the article itself. This came out on January 29th. The Keto Way. What if meat is our healthiest diet? Eating high-fat, low-carbohydrate foods has helped many people battle obesity, diabetes, and other health problems, even as livestock agriculture contributes significantly to climate change. Now, Gary, I'm in a group on email where Gary talks to a lot of other influencers, like in the low-carb keto space. And he said he didn't write that last line of even as livestock agriculture contributes significantly to climate change, because we don't believe that. Cows are not the reason why we have issues with climate change. There's more climate change issues. Now, I'm not going to get into that today, but there's more issues with cars and buses and other modes of transportation than cow farts will ever be. And I've done some Jimmy rants about that before as well, so no need to beat a dead horse. But let's get into the article. Choosing to avoid meat and eat a plant-based diet has never seemed so virtuous and necessary. We've been told, it's been hammered down our throats. Oh, plant-based eating. Yeah, it's the bee's knees. That's how you get healthy. And my whole life, I've always heard that. Oh, you want to opt for a more plant-based diet. And don't think that's by accident. There has been this move away from meat. And that should make your brain go, why? Why would they be doing that? What is the purpose? It's almost as if you want to keep people sick, you vilify the very thing that will keep them healthy. And I think that's what you're going to hear from Gary in this article. Between the intrinsic cruelty of industrial livestock production and livestock's climate footprint, estimated by the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization to be 14.5% of all greenhouse gases worldwide, significantly greater than plant agriculture, it has become increasingly difficult to defend the place of meat and animal source foods in our diet. I think one thing that the plant-based people underestimate is just how much so many of us in the low-carb keto world also abhor the industrial livestock production. Like, I wish we could get to the place where we use a lot of the ground that we currently use for crops, and we throw ruminants on that ground, and we let them roam, and we let them have grass-fed and grass finished and do all the things to make proper beef production. The problem is a lot of those grasslands are just destroyed by agriculture. And so, yeah, there might be, quote, cruelty with the industrial livestock production. Nobody is arguing that. I don't think any of us like that. I think we love that cows are happy cows and taken care of and treated well all throughout the processing and everything, all the way to the very end of life until it becomes dinner on the plate. So they act like that's a reason to not eat meat. No, it's a reason not to eat industrialized meat, but there are better ways. And then as far as the climate footprint, 14.5% of all greenhouse gases. Is anybody asking what the rest of that 85.5% is from? 86.5, 85.5? Anybody? It's transportation. It's all these cars and buses and planes and all the other things putting things into the environment. So let's stop pretending like that meat is the reason why we have such a climate crisis. No. Jonathan Safran Foer, the novelist turned animal rights activist, may have best captured this kind of thinking in his 2019 book, We Are the Weather, Saving the Planet Begins at Breakfast. He writes, "We cannot keep the kind of meals we have known and also keep the planet we have known. We must either let some eating habits go or we need to let the planet go." It is that straightforward and that fraught. Jonathan, no, it's not. Not even close. It amazes me how all of these attempts to get people to stop eating meat are all based on fear. And this author of this book, obviously a militant vegan, is trying to make meat eating kind of, you're evil if you do it. And this is the way they framed it, you guys. And so those of us that see the value in meat, see the complete protein, see the nourishing nutrients that come in well-produced beef, for example, they're trying to make us feel bad for making that good choice. And they've done it for a long time. When I came on the scene in 2005 to start blogging, they were already out there in full force, and they've been out there unified ever since. So let's continue. And if you just joined us, I'm reading from an article in the Wall Street Journal, got published a few days ago by Gary Taubes. Yes, that Gary Taubes. He's got a brand new book out called The Case for Keto. And so the Wall Street Journal let him write an article, and this one is called The Keto Way: What If Eating Meat is Our Healthiest Diet? An essential part of this argument is the proposition that animal source foods, particularly red and processed meats, aren't just bad for the planet, but they're harmful to the people who eat them. Michael Pollan famously urged in his 2008 bestseller, In Defense of Food, that is why we should eat mostly plants. He did say that. This has become the lone piece of dietary counseling on which most nutritional authorities seemingly agree. And it creates a win-win proposition. By eating mostly or even exclusively fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, while getting fat and protein from plant-based sources, we maximize our likelihood of living a long and healthy life while also doing what's right for the planet. And this has been my problem with the whole plant-based movement from the start. They make it seem like if you don't agree with them, that you're a bad person. Oh, you don't care about the planet. Oh, you just want people to be sick. And I've seen this on a lot of the carnivore leaders, like social media pages. You'll have people who will chime in and say, oh, you're a horrible human being, talking about, say, Sean Baker, for example. You're a horrible human being for promoting red meat to people. And it's like, okay, you displace what you think about people who eat meat, and now you vilify the very people who promote that way of eating, even though they have very empirical evidence themselves in their own bodies, as well as in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people who have decided to eat that way. And now you're going to vilify them personally just because you disagree with their choices? Come on. But is it that simple? A growing body of evidence suggests it isn't at least not for most of us. The other movement that has won increased acceptance over the past decade is a low carbohydrate, high fat ketogenic diet, keto for short, which has emerged as a direct response to the explosive rise in the incidence of obesity and diabetes. More than 70% of American adults are now obese or overweight. According to the CDC, nearly 1 in 10 is severely obese and more than 1 in 10 is diabetic. An unavoidable implication of these numbers is that the conventional wisdom on weight loss, see if this sounds familiar, eat less and move your body more, has failed tens of millions of Americans. And this is something that has motivated me in my own work. We have been given an insane protocol when it comes to trying to lose weight and get healthy. I think we can all agree that what we've been doing has not worked, and not worked spectacularly, horribly. Like, I think that's what draws a lot of people into keto to begin with, is they realize, all right, something about what we've been told is not quite right. We don't know necessarily what it is, but we know that what we're doing is not right. And that's what Gary is outlining here. Look, we have to admit that the eat less, move more advice that we've been given ad nauseum since I was a very young kid, that's been the advice that they give out to people to get healthy. It's failed. And if it's failed, isn't it logical to think that there would be options that would pop up that would be a much better alternative than eat less, move more? I would think so. And that's where keto has come into play. And Gary's articulating that. These are the people who, talking about the people who have believed in eat less, move more, and it's failed them. These are the people who sooner or later very well may experiment with alternative approaches, venturing into the realm of what's called fad diets. They can try a plant-based eating, vegetarian, even vegan. And if those don't return them to health, try keto or one of the many variations on low carbohydrate, high fat diets, from the original Atkins diet to the South Beach diet to paleo and even to the latest trend, carnivore. If they find that an unconventional approach works for them, allowing them to achieve and maintain a relatively healthy weight without hunger, that will be their motivation to sustain it. And see, here's the thing. I have long called for, if we're going to have dietary guidelines for Americans, we don't need one set of guidelines. Because what happens when that one set of guidelines fails and fails miserably? People get frustrated. They wonder what's wrong with them. They try to cut calories even more. They try to exercise even more. Where does that lead you? You still don't lose weight. You feel even more miserable. You start getting hungry. You start getting frustrated. And at some point, you just say, F it. And when you get to the F it stage, you go back to binge eating whatever you want. I did that. I did that in 1999. I went on a low-fat diet because that's what you're supposed to do. And I faithfully stuck to that low-fat diet for about 9 months, lost a significant amount of weight. And I was so miserable. I was hungry all the time. I was irritable. I was angry, and I couldn't figure out why. I now know why. Even though I was losing weight, even though my cholesterol came down, even though, quote, my health was getting better, end quote, my mental health was not getting better. I was depriving my brain of fat, which I now know is essential to stabilizing mood and maximizing your cognitive output. Like, all of those things are important. I didn't realize that. I just kept the calories low and I kept the fat grams low. That was it. And when I felt like I was not succeeding as well as I should, I went out and did cardio and did cardio and did cardio. And again, hungry. Oh, well, and I remember some dietitians saying, oh, a little hunger is a good thing. And I'm like, okay, now it's not. Maybe then I believed that, but no. So people get so frustrated that it pushes them to one of these other options. And a lot of people buy into the vegan vegetarian movement because, yeah, they get off the junk food and you feel better. And and obviously keto, paleo, carnivore, all the things are doing the same thing. And so I don't know why anybody would poo-poo on someone trying to better themselves regardless of it. So the dietary guidelines should have a paleo version, should have a keto version, should have an all-meat version, should have a plant-based version, and keep the same stupid diet that they have now. All right, guys, here are your options. We have vetted all of these out. Here are the pros and cons of each one. Here's how to do it. And then go see a specialist that specializes in one of these. So then the Dietetics Society could have specialists in each of those diets that you then go see to do it the right way. Why is there a downside to that at all? Why does there have to be any kind of one-size-fits-all diet for all people? That doesn't make a hill of beans sense to me at all. But because this way of eating is most easily accomplished eating animal-sourced foods, they may come to believe that what's good for them and even their children isn't good for the planet. So Gary's talking about, okay, people decide, okay, I feel good when I eat animal foods, but I've heard so many things about it harming the planet, so what do I do with that? Keto diets are based on the proposition that for those who are predisposed to become obese or diabetic, carbohydrate-rich foods trigger that predisposition. That isn't because of the calories that are in there, as the conventional wisdom on obesity assumes, but because of the effect those foods have on your insulin, the key hormone that dominates the regulation of fat storage and fat metabolism. Insulin is secreted mostly in response to the carbohydrates you eat, not just in the forms of sugars, starches, and grains, whether they're whole grains or otherwise, but also from the so-called healthy fruits and legumes, which are all the staples of this well-formulated plant-based diet. He's right. Think about all the things that we've been taught about diets, and very few of them focus on insulin, except for real food-based diets like paleo, keto, and carnivore. Diabetes researcher George Cahill in 1971 in the prestigious Banting Memorial Lecture at the annual meeting of the American Diabetes Association described a process like a switch. When fat cells sense the presence of insulin in the circulation, as Cahill described it, they respond by storing fat and inhibiting its release. That is why you get fatter. When insulin is undetectable, we burn that stored fat for fuel, and you get leaner. So the metabolic state of ketosis, from which the keto diet gets its name, happens when carbohydrates are restricted almost entirely, and fat provides most of the fuel for the body. The hormonal insulin-centric regulation of fat storage and fat metabolism still remains textbook medicine. See, this is the thing that gets me the most. Doctors know this process of how insulin works. Why is there this disconnect? They know how insulin works. They know what insulin does. Why do they insist on thinking that somehow lowering insulin levels through carbohydrate restriction and inducing a state of nutritional ketosis and replacing the carbohydrates as your fuel source with fat as the fuel source? Why is this still controversial at all? It is basic medical textbook science. Yet its relevance to obesity has been effectively ignored by nutritionists, obesity researchers, all of whom have overwhelmingly preferred to think that all calories are equally capable of stimulating fat accumulation, that we get fat because we overeat too much energy, not because the carbohydrates we consume have some unique ability to stimulate fat accumulation. Are you hearing him here? Fat accumulates because of insulin being too high. What makes insulin high? Carbohydrate primarily. There's other things that make it high too, but carbohydrate is the main driver of insulin. So if insulin is what makes us fat, and you eat carbohydrates and that raises insulin and you get fatter, doesn't it make sense that if you cut the carbohydrates, you cut the insulin, you cut the fat? From a logical standpoint, this makes sense. For some reason, significant proportions of Americans remain relatively lean and healthy, may require minimizing their insulin secretion. This in turn means more or less rigid abstinence from carbohydrate-rich foods. He's even making the point that even if it doesn't show up in fat storage, on a lean person that's the so-called thin outside, fat inside, they've got insulin resistance and other issues with the insulin getting higher and higher. This is where a ketogenic diet would help as well. And I hate this perception of, if you have fat on the outside, you obviously need to have whatever, fill in the blank, exercise more, you need to cut your calories, you need to do this, you need to do that. Whereas if somebody's thin on the outside, we don't say two shits about those people. And those people could be a lot more metabolically unhealthy than someone with weight on their body. I hate this notion in our society, in our culture, that just because someone has weight on their body, that they are automatically incredibly unhealthy. And the inverse of that, if you don't have weight on the body, oh wow, you're healthy, good job. We've got to end that. And this is where looking at health markers is so much more important than just looking at someone's weight. Animal sourced foods, meat, fowl, fish, even processed meats typically make up the bulk of this approach to weight control because they are almost entirely fat and protein with minimal carbohydrates. Until insulin was discovered in 1921 and insulin therapy was put to use treating diabetes, these diets were known as animal diets. They were the standard of care. We talked about this last week on Jimmy Rants. For people with diabetes, delaying death from what is called today type 1 diabetes. It's the insulin-dependent form, the autoimmune form. The body looked at the pancreas and thought it was a foreign invader, attacked the pancreas, and pretty much killed all the beta cell function. That's how you get type 1 diabetes. And controlling the disease indefinitely in those with type 2 diabetes. As long as you stay keto and you're type 2 diabetic, you will keep your type 2 diabetes under control. Where people get into trouble is their A1C comes back down into line and they think they're healed of their type 2 diabetes. It's still there. You just have to keep doing the things. Type 2 is the most common form associated with excess weight and age, and it's still the case. One can certainly be a vegan or vegetarian and still eat a low-carb, high-fat ketogenic diet, getting your protein and fat from foods like tofu and tempeh, nuts and seed soy, and nut butters and vegetable oils. Well, there are problems with some of those lists of foods, but I suppose if you wanted to look at it from a macronutrient perspective, you certainly could mimic the effects of that. There are well-formulated ketogenic diets out there on places like Facebook that demonstrate all the essential vitamins, minerals, and fats for those who are willing to eat animal-sourced foods. When I first started reporting on this subject, again, this is Gary Taubes speaking, as a journalist 20 years ago, and remember, if you joined us late, go look up Gary Taubes' article that made a big splash in our culture back in 2001. What if it's all been a big fat lie? It might have been 2002. Anyway, it was 20 years ago. What if it's all been a big fat lie? It was in New York Times Magazine. Seminal, you guys, in rejuvenating the low-carb movement. Now, I had not started my journey yet. Dr. Atkins slipped and fell and hit his head on the ice and died in 2003. So that was a couple of years after Gary wrote his article. And then in 2004 was when I started, and I started my Atkins journey. And then 2005 was when I started blogging. But he was reporting on this stuff 20 years ago. Virtually no meaningful research had been published to test the claims of Dr. Robert Atkins, who advocated for this low-carb way of eating. Since then, though, carbohydrate-restricted diets, keto or otherwise, may have become the most tested diet in all of human history. The website clinicaltrials.gov currently reports more than 100 clinical trials of ketogenic diets in progress, with nearly 90 of them already complete. And a clinical trial, you guys, is legit. Like, that's the gold standard. We're not talking about observational or epidemiological where you look at a study and you extrapolate. No. He's talking about physically having patients in clinical trial testing. I got a couple of them I will be sharing with you later in the week, but they're all the time coming out. And we need to be aware of that. I think sometimes it feels like nothing's happening on that front because you don't hear about it because it's getting squelched. All the findings in this research are consistent. Ketogenic eating is safe and effective at controlling your weight and your blood sugar. Pick any disease from Alzheimer's, anxiety disorders, traumatic brain injury, tumors. Researchers somewhere are testing whether the ketogenic diet will improve its diagnosis and prognosis. In 2019, the ADA, the American Diabetes Association, concluded that low carbohydrate and very low carbohydrate diets, that is keto, were the only dietary therapies that consistently resulted in beneficial outcomes for adults with diabetes and prediabetes. And that only happened because the new president of the ADA is a low-carb dieter herself with type 2 diabetes. So she was able to heal herself eating that way. If it wasn't for her, we would still be stuck in the old times. Blood sugar values go down, blood pressure drops, chronic pain decreases or disappears, lipid profiles improve, inflammatory markers improve, energy increases, weight decreases, sleep is improved, IBS gets lessened, medication adjusted downward and even eliminated, which reduces the side effects for patients and the cost to society. The results we achieve for our patients are impressive and durable. Other than that, keto doesn't work. I'm amazed when you can rattle off all of the benefits that people get from a ketogenic diet. And there's still people out there that go, yeah, and? I just don't understand that. If people are getting results, don't we want to celebrate results when people get them? And there are a lot of people who get results eating a ketogenic diet. There are a lot of people who get results eating a carnivore diet. Why do we discourage people who are doing something proactive about their health, losing weight, getting healthy? Like, none of that has ever made sense to me, unless there's a deeper reason they are vilifying this way of eating. And I think it's the meat agenda. They don't like animal-based foods being out there. They know it gets people healthy. There's a lot of money being made in the medical health system. There's a lot of money being made in the weight loss industry. I hate to be so jaded, but guys, I've been at this for 17 years. I have seen it all. And the only thing I can conclude is, all I really want to say is they don't really care about us, as Michael Jackson said. And it seems that way. What other conclusion can you draw why they're not more supportive of a low-carb ketogenic approach? The fact that these diets produce such striking results, even if anecdotally, poses a tremendous challenge to all the conventional wisdom we've ever had about nutrition. Since the late 1970s, healthy eating, see if this sounds familiar, has been defined as mostly plants, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, minimal animal fats, minimal red meat and processed meats. It is the view embodied in the brand new dietary guidelines issued in December 2020 by the USDA. This diet continues to get endorsed so widely because epidemiologic surveys tell us that this is how lean, healthy, and health-conscious people tend to eat. So there's the mistake. And I told you guys about this when I did a Jimmy Rants on a Ask Me Anything recently, talking about these guidelines. They did not look at low-carb ketogenic research. Why? Because most of that research looked at the effects of a ketogenic diet on weight loss and on health parameters that got better and on disease states that got better. And they claim that that's not the intention of the dietary guidelines. The intention of the dietary guidelines is this is how people who are lean, healthy, and health conscious tend to eat. But what they're not taking into account with those people who are lean, healthy, and health conscious is they don't deal with the underlying disease of insulin resistance. So how can you put people who are insulin resistant on a diet for people who are insulin sensitive? It's ludicrous. It's insane. As Gary says, these surveys don't tell us whether these health conscious people are lean and healthy because they eat this way or because of other factors, from socioeconomic privilege to lifestyle, that are associated with being health conscious. No meaningful experimental evidence, no clinical trials to date exists to support this connection that we live longer, have healthier lives by eating a mostly plant-based diet over an animal-sourced foods diet. Think about that. Why do people believe so adamantly in the plant-based diet when there really hasn't been any rigorous kind of studies being done to look at that? I don't even know how you would do that study other than put people on a solely plant-based diet and put people on a solely animal-based diet and have them do it for a year and test parameters and have the subjects be similar in metabolic health. You put someone with type 2 diabetes on either a plant-based diet or a carnivore diet, who's going to do better? I think just by default, the carnivore is going to have to do better because the exacerbation of the diabetes will happen on the plant-based diet. Do you hear many plant-based dieters bragging about coming off of their insulin, bragging about their low blood sugar levels, bragging about their A1C levels? Probably not nearly as much as you do people who eat keto and carnivore. Almost invariably, that gets better. In the early 2000s, when I interviewed several hundred clinicians, researchers, and public health authorities for my first book on nutrition science called Good Calories, Bad Calories, some of the most influential of them readily admitted to using the ketogenic diet themselves. How interesting is that? It's a great way to lose weight, said the late Stanford University endocrinologist Gerald Livin. That's not the issue. They would not prescribe it for their patients because they didn't think it was healthy. When they regained the weight, because they didn't get on a diet that would help them, because they were in fear of it not being healthy, all the patients would gain back the weight and repeat the cycle. The big difference between the physicians and researchers admitting to using keto 20 years ago for temporary weight loss and those eating and prescribing keto today is that the latter, those right now, the practitioners now, they already believe and know that these diets are the healthiest way for them and their patients to eat. See, guys, we have so much evidence now, and not just evidence in the research world. Think about all the people. I've been on low-carb diet for 17 years, and no, I'm not the perfect physique, but I obviously come on camera every day. You see my energy. You see how intelligent I appear. I could be fooling you guys, but you see how happy I am. You see all the things on my face every single day. But it's not just me. Like, think about all the people you know who've been around eating this way for a very long time. If there was something bad about red meat, wouldn't it manifest by now? Wouldn't it at some point show up as some kind of diseased state? Of course it would. But it hasn't happened. And it hasn't happened. And you should ask yourself, why hasn't it happened? If this is so unhealthy, what's the deal? And if it's not unhealthy, why do they continue to put out this lie that eating red meat is going to cause you to die tomorrow? Think about it. Clinicians today don't worry about saturated fat in their patients. They don't care that you're eating saturated fat. In fact, they encourage it. All the clinical trials confirm that this keto way of eating is beneficial, and they can see their patients and themselves getting healthier eating this way, often over the course of weeks or months. They are loath to recommend anything else. Now, I will say, bioindividuality may make it where, for some people, a low-carb, ketogenic, carnivore type of diet is not going to be optimal. And this is where individual practitioners make that choice about, okay, for this person in this circumstance, we're not going to put them in a state of ketosis. But I don't think anybody needs a preponderance of their diet being high carb. Nobody needs that. There might be circumstances where they don't need to be ketogenic for whatever the reasons. But for the most part, most people would do just fine eating a ketogenic diet. And we know, based on a previous study, that 88% of the US population has some spectrum of insulin resistance. You might have a little bit of it, you might have a lot bit of it, but most people, 88%, are on that spectrum. That 12% can probably get away with not being in ketosis and still staying healthy. That's the lean people that we were talking about with the dietary guidelines a moment ago. I have interviewed more than 120 of these low-carb physicians who tell me that they chose medicine as a career because they wanted to make their patients get healthy, not to manage their disease. Think about all the doctors who their sole job is just to be a drug peddler. Oh, you need a refill on your prescription of that maintenance drug that I gave you for your diabetes? Here you go. Cha-ching, cha-ching, pharmaceutical company makes money. If you start to get healthier because you eat a ketogenic diet, what happens to that cha-ching, cha-ching that the pharmaceutical company gets? It's no longer needed, right? And the jaded part of Jimmy Moore just can't help but think they are telling us the opposite of what we need to know. They're vilifying perfectly healthy ways of eating, healthy foods, because they want to keep the gravy train going. Now, you don't want to believe that because, oh my gosh, doctors would never do that. I don't know anymore, to be honest, because it seems too weird that we have all this evidence that a ketogenic diet could be healthy for so many people dealing with chronic disease and obesity. And yet, what do? Turn a blind eye to it, vilify it, discourage you from being in a nasty, dangerous state of ketosis, when it's never been dangerous at all to be in a state of nutritional ketosis. Not one bit. Getting their patients off of the carb-rich foods, at the very least, sugars, grains, and starches, and then eating something akin to keto makes that happen for them. When public health authorities argue that a healthy diet for all means mostly plants, they make the job of these physicians and the challenge to their patients that much harder. And that's the problem too. People have all of these images they're hearing out there in the media and being rammed down their throat. This is the way to be healthy. And so when a physician who has educated themselves on keto and understands the importance of animal-based foods has someone come in their office, well, help me make a diet that's mostly plants that's healthy, it makes it incredibly difficult. And it's why there has been an underground rise of low-carb keto for a very long time. I've been a part of it from the very beginning of that kind of underground movement. Gary was out there a few years before I was. Dr. Eric Westman, Jackie Eberstein. I could go down the list of all these people. And in more recent years, you've had people like Dominique D'Agostino and Dr. Ken Berry. I mean, I could go down the list of all the people. But we have all been trying to move this boulder forward in educating the masses that this is probably the default diet. Think about your whole life. When you have defaulted to a diet, what's it been? Low fat. Low fat. Lots of healthy whole grains and low fat. That's been the default diet, mostly plants. Why isn't the default diet keto? Why isn't the default diet a mostly animal-based foods diet? And if you want to throw a few plants in there, that's fine. Unless you have a contraindication to some of the things in plants. Why is keto not the default? I have asked myself that question for over a decade. It seems to me that if there's no harm, no foul, people eating keto, for the most part, and that's true, why isn't it the default? There's a lot of contraindication to people eating a low-fat diet. Not many people can sustain that. Not many people feel good on that. Not many people get all these benefits from that. But almost everybody gets benefit from eating keto. Why don't we at least say, if you're going to start something, start with keto. And then if that doesn't work, adjust from there. But keto's the default. I've made that argument for a very long time. Though the argument for low-carb, high-fat diets has made inroads with medical and public health authorities, many continue to have reservations about it. I have prescribed very low carbohydrate eating strategies for many of my patients because they could not achieve results with more traditional eating plans, according to Dr. Michael Danziger. I have interviewed Michael Danziger before. He's an expert out of Tufts University School of Medicine. But he says the same is true for people who eat a very low-fat vegetarian diet. He remains concerned about the potential cardiovascular dangers of saturated fats for the environment. There is no question eating less beef can make a favorable impact. So he does still have that old school way of thinking that it's having a negative effect on people's cardiovascular health because of the saturated fat and then on the environment. Dr. Walter Willett is out of Harvard. He's a nutritional epidemiologist, probably the most influential academic researcher arguing on behalf for a plant-based eating, agrees that reducing insulin secretion in those with obesity and diabetes is vitally important, but he doesn't see the ketogenic diet as necessary for most people. People can accrue major physiologic benefits, he says, by improving the quality of the carbohydrates that they consume, eating whole foods instead of highly processed grains and sugars without having to avoid carbohydrate-rich foods entirely. I think Dr. Willett has it wrong. Like, once you damage your body from year upon year upon year of eating what I like to call crappy garbage, the processed grains and sugars, all bets are off. Like, you change the physical makeup of your inside of your body. Your body simply cannot handle carbohydrates in the same way anymore. I don't care if you improve the quality of those carbohydrates or not, because you bombarded your body with crappy garbage for so long. Now even those so-called healthy carbs, even fruits and vegetables, can be harmful. And people like scoff at that. Well, nobody got fat eating a carrot. Okay, fair enough. That's true. But carrots can be detrimental for some people if they're in a really bad metabolic state because of the crap they ate and how long they ate that crap. I think about my own example. I ate junk food and got fatter and fatter and fatter all throughout my 20s until I was 32, till I was well over 400 pounds before I decided to make a change. And I was in bad shape. And if I had switched over to eating so-called healthy carbs, I don't think I would have seen the success, because those carbs still raised insulin. Those carbs still were problematic in my body. And until you return your insulin sensitivity, you're not going to be able to handle those things. Dr. Willett is not putting it through the lens of what do you do with people with severe insulin resistance. And it matters. If you don't put that context into this discussion, you're missing the point, which is why what Gary is saying about keto and eating animal-based foods is so important, because it does heal. And I don't see what the contraindication is to people like Dr. Willett if people choose not to have those foods that do raise blood sugar, do raise insulin levels, do maybe slightly make them more inflamed. Let's stop pretending like just because they're healthier that they're healthy for the individual when they very clearly are not. A predominantly plant-based ketogenic diet would be better for planetary health and very likely for human health than a high meat and dairy ketogenic diet, Dr. Willett says. And I got to be honest, when I hear about plant-based keto, I almost cringe. I cringe because, yes, I get it. Some people don't want to eat meat. They have an aversion to it, either psychologically or, they have exemptions where they just don't feel good about eating meat. Fair enough. I'm glad there's plant-based keto options for you. But honestly, if you're going to eat a ketogenic diet, eat animal-based foods. If you're going to eat a ketogenic diet that's mostly plant-based, eat eggs. Eat fish with it. Like, I think we have gone down this rabbit hole of assuming that a ketogenic diet would be better if it was plant-based. And I hate that. Like, there was this movement back when I first started blogging called the Eco Atkins. So the Atkins diet had gotten all this attention. And so these environmental people came and said, well, we don't need a Atkins diet. We need a better diet. We need the Eco Atkins. And so it was this supposedly plant-based, lower fat kind of Atkins diet. And it's the same thing with these vegetarian keto. It's like, okay, more power to you. But if you truly want to experience health, you have to add the animal foods. That's where the nutrition is. That's where the complete proteins are. Would the millions who might benefit from keto embrace a vegetarian keto? Perhaps, but as with any eating pattern, the degree to which people enjoy the recommended foods has a very strong bearing on whether they will stick to them or not. For many people, meat and meat-based foods provide satisfaction that plants simply cannot. I can't tell you how good I feel after I have eggs from my backyard chickens, after I eat a steak. You're just like, ah. And my favorite food, if I ever see you in person and you want to take me out to dinner, I will be your best friend forever if I have one of two options that are meat-based. Either a ribeye steak or pork belly. Either one, doesn't matter, or both. Because those things are so nourishing. And this is an undervalued of a keto carnivore type of approach. When you eat a steak, or you eat pork belly, or eat any kind of other real food that's got enough natural fats to come with it, you're not hungry, you're happy, you can go many hours between meals. It's beautiful when you get to that level where you don't really think about food. You don't think about the next meal. I literally don't ever think about my next meal when I'm eating or preparing a meal now. Whereas I always thought about, I'm making breakfast. Okay, oh man, I can't wait till lunch. Oh my gosh, it's gonna have, and then you get to lunch. Oh my gosh, it's so, but supper, I gotta have that. And then in between, all these little snacks. Oh, I really want a Snicker bar right now. And you're always thinking of food. I don't think of food until it's time to eat food. That's when I think of food. It's amazing. And it's keto that did that. So the tension remains. The healthiest diet for those who are predisposed to becoming fat and diabetic may not be what's the healthiest for the planet. Lab-grown meat, don't get me started on that. I think that's the most nonsensical thing that's ever been done besides these plant-based burgers. And fish products may help resolve this conflict going into the future, though reasons for skepticism about this include health and other concerns. And we can certainly raise livestock in ways that are better for the environment and make the practice more sustainable, just like I talked about at the beginning. If we cleared up a lot of the agricultural land that's being used to raise crops like corn and soybeans and all this nonsense that we raise for no good reason, get rid of all that, then all of that becomes grassland for cows to do what cows do on grassland. The Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that better feed and feed practices, better grazing management, animal husbandry can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by a third in many areas of the world. But no one can tell us whether we should subordinate our own health and well-being, and perhaps that of our children as well, just to save the planet. That is your personal decision. If that trade-off is the reality of our food situation in the century ahead, we have to accept the consequences when we make our choices. See, here's the thing. There are people that think the planet is going to spontaneously combust by the year 2035. I've heard that. I've heard 2045. All of these gloom and doom. The planet's not going to survive. We're going to be on fire because of all the greenhouse gases, and it's all the meat eaters' fault. That's how they've set up this boogeyman of why we need to vilify meat. And the indirect result of that is we're taking away the very thing that's keeping a lot of people healthy. And I think that's wrong. I think we need to have that discussion. And there are people doing that. Go watch the film Sacred Cow. Diana Rogers and Rob Wolf put that together. They have an accompanying book I'm trying to get them on my podcast to talk about it, but it goes into a lot of the sustainable agriculture and how ruminants and other animals are kind of the way to save the planet and not reducing them in our diet. It's just, it's amazing. Go learn, go educate yourself. But those are the discussions we need to be having, not just assuming, well, we've always believed a plant-based diet is the healthiest and is the best for the environment, so therefore it's true. It's never been true. Never been studied, never been shown in any kind of scientific research. You know, they've been yelling at us over the past year. Trust the science, listen to the science. Well, the science is saying animal foods are pretty damn awesome. And I think it's time we do trust the science and we turn to a ketogenic diet. All right, guys, again, go check out Gary Taubes. He wrote a wonderful piece in the Wall Street Journal called The Keto Way, What If Meat is Our Healthiest Diet? He recently wrote a book called The Case for Keto. I'm going to be interviewing him on an upcoming episode of the Livin, Vida Low-Carb show here really soon. So stay tuned for that. But I want to see what you guys have to say about this one. We're going to go here first to Instagram, then over to Facebook, finally over to Twitch. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. See what you have to say on this one. Joshua says, my mother-in-law said to me once, I don't think I could fast for 24 hours. I said, if you can't, you are insulin resistant, but she won't try anything different. Yeah, the fasting is a funny one because when people hear fast, they hear starvation. And so I don't want to starve myself. Well, if you fuel yourself better, you can spontaneously fast. In fact, before I came on the air, I was looking at some stories of my friends and of people I follow, and Rebecca Farmer from Tailored Keto Health was describing how she's been on a 40-hour fast, and she's like, all right, I'm starting to get hungry now, so I think I'm going to eat. She literally was waiting for the hunger to kick in before she started eating because she's so in tune with her body that she's like, all right, I'm not hungry right now. I'm just going to listen to my body. And if it's not giving me hunger pangs, I'm just going to fast. And so she did for 40 hours. And now she's going to go have food. And the other day she had over 6,000 calories worth of food. So some days you eat a little more. Some days you skip eating and you listen to your body. But it is an uphill battle, Joshua, trying to convince people. Val says, I love ribeye. Recently discovered chuck eye steaks, though. Poor man's ribeye. I have had a chuck eye steak. I don't like it near as much as a ribeye, but it definitely is a lot cheaper than ribeye steaks. Recently saw where Bill Gates has bought up a lot of farmland. Yes, I broke that news here on Jimmy Rants. I wonder what he has planned for that. Probably not to raise cattle. Oh no, Mr. Vegan, I have no hopes of anything good about him owning most of America's farmland now. He is the number one farmer in America. Those of you that did not know that, Bill Gates is now your number one farmer in the United States of America. Crazy. All right, thank you, Instagram. Let's pop over here now to Facebook and then over to Twitch here in a second. What's up, Facebook? See what you guys have to say. Hello, hello. What do you say to people who say we need fruits and veggies for vitamins and minerals, Kathy? Great question. So the assumption has been that fruits and vegetables are the only place you can get micronutrients, and that meat is just a blob of protein and fat. Would it surprise you to learn, and this is how you can describe it for them, would it surprise you to learn that the top 20 most nutrient-dense foods, meaning have the most vitamins and minerals in them, the top 20 are all animal-based foods? Did you know that? Did you know the so-called superfoods of kale and blueberries and quinoa? And we could go down the list of all this nonsense stuff that they say you have to eat to be healthy. The top 20. Not one single plant-based anything in the top 20. And if you need that list, go look up the book Keto by Maria and Craig Emmerich. You might be able to see that chart somewhere online as well. But the top 20 most nutrient-dense foods are all mostly beef products. And so this notion that you can't get any nutrients from meat is just ludicrous. Meat is chock full of nutrients. Eggs are full of incredible nutrients. That just frustrates me that people don't even realize that. But it's because they haven't been taught that. And they haven't been taught that because meat has been vilified. Meat has been tried to be discouraged in the American diet. And when you vilify something and you try to discourage people away from it, you're sure the hell not going to tell people all the amazing nutrition that is in animal-based foods. So that's what I would say. Hello, Tanya. Not surprised, liver is chock full. Yes. Liver's unbelievable, which is why you should try to have it. I'm working on that. I do freeze-dried liver and heart and other things, but I need to try to get raw from a quality source because I do know the value that it gives your body. All right, thank you, Facebook. Let's go over here now to Twitch. What's up, Twitch? Hope you guys are doing good today on this fine Monday. Cariana says, also look up the video Follow the Money from Tom Naughton. Yes, it's on YouTube. Look up that. Tom's a good friend of mine. He did a documentary film about 12 years ago called Fathead, all about some of the low-carb diet and how we've been misled about saturated fat and cholesterol, da-da-da. Marcus says, it's been said that it's hard to convince somebody when their paycheck depends on them remaining unconvinced. Yeah. That's the medical profession and the research profession. Very hard to get through to them. Excellent topic, says Marcus. Thank you. Yeah, I have become so, having been around so long, watched trends, watched people come and go, watched like messaging for so long. I'm just over it. I mean, if by now you don't understand, you're not paying attention. Because all the information is out there. Open your eyes, learn, study for yourself, analyze, listen to not just Jimmy Moore, listen to some of the vegan voices, listen to me, listen to Ken Berry, listen to all the everybody out there, hear what everybody has to say, and then ask yourself the question, what makes the most sense? And if at the end of the day you think a plant-based diet is far superior to an animal-based diet, then that's the decision you make. And I'm all for that. Go for it if that's what you believe. But respect and honor people who look at all that same information and they come to the conclusion that an animal-based foods diet is the optimal way to eat. So guys, go check it out. Gary Taubes, Wall Street Journal article, The Keto Way, What If Meat is Our Healthiest Diet? Just came out a few days ago. And it's really good for those people who are skeptical about keto and eating meat. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live right here on the Jimmy Rants Instagram page. Go follow me, you guys. We do go live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for being here today, you guys. We also simulcast live on my Facebook page as well as over on Twitch. Just a reminder, download the Twitch app. And you can follow Jimmy Moore Rants. So if something were to happen to traditional social media, I will be there. And you can go check me out on the Twitch app. If you missed the live, you can watch it on the replay right here on the Jimmy Rants Instagram page. Just as soon as this is over, popping it up on IGTV. So go watch it there. You can also watch it over on the Twitch app. Also watch it over on YouTube. Type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. And then finally, the official website for this show, JimmyRants.com, is where you can see all the past episodes. All right, guys, tomorrow, for those of you that say you don't talk about keto enough, like that lady did over the weekend, I got a research paper that was just published last week about the ketogenic diet for PCOS. It's a randomized controlled clinical pilot trial that I'm really excited to talk about how keto impacts those of you, those women out there with PCOS. So join us again tomorrow at 11 a.m. We'll see you then. All right.